anyone can be a leader. Anyone can make a positive impact. Leadership isn't connected to a title.
Welcome to Friday 5 with Dave Adams. I'm really looking forward to a conversation with my friend Heather Luciani, CEO of Marshall Community Credit Union. The credit union has 265 million in assets and 15,000 members, 55 employees. I've known Heather as she's served at the chapter level. She served on the Michigan Credit Union Board of Directors. I've watched Heather grow while she was COO and for the last 10 years as CEO. As I said, active in the chapter. Under Heather's leadership, the credit union was the recipient of the MCUL Outstanding Credit Union of the Year. And for the 9th consecutive year in 2020 is a Radon Crystal Performance Award recipient. She's active in her community. She has a lot of great perspectives on leadership and the credit union difference. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this interview with Heather Luciani. Well, Heather Luciani, welcome to Friday 5 with Dave Adams. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Great, thanks for having me, Dave. I'm excited to talk more with you today.
We've had the opportunity to chat over the years and get acquainted. But as I was thinking about this interview, I was really looking forward to learning more about your perspectives on leadership and your career thus far, with a long way to go, unlike some of us, and to learn more just about your personal interests and so on. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about that career journey, how you got started in financial services and how you got started in credit unions and kind of how your career has progressed thus far.
Yeah, it's interesting to look back and start adding up the years. It's like, how did I get here already? So I started, actually my first introduction to banking was in college. I was an intern at a community bank. And when I graduated, they actually offered me an opportunity to stay on, but I really wanted to be a financial advisor. That was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. And I really loved that. And, looking at data to help people reach financial goals, which is actually exactly what I do today in a different industry. But so when my husband and I got engaged, we found it was a lot easier for me to relocate. He's in education, and at the time it was very difficult to find jobs in education. And so I went back to that same community bank and I joined them in their lending department. And I was there for about 5 years. So that I really enjoyed the community aspect, the getting to know the customers. And it operated as it was a thrift. So, voted on by the depositors. And so when I switched over to the credit union, I thought it'd be very similar. And it was in some cases, but it was also very different. And the one thing that really hooked me in, the people helping people, I had been able to align to that through earlier stages of my career. So I really was finding that anyway. But one thing was the collaboration of the industry was completely different. I went to community bank conferences, but there I did not feel or find that collaboration. And so that really hooked me because I really felt like being part of this industry, I'm not just the CEO of Marshall Community Credit Union and kind of on that island. It's like I have so many peers that are so willing to help and just offer learnings and advice and perspectives. And I really didn't have that in the community banking world. And I mean, maybe some people find it there. I felt like that was really missing. And so you were kind of feeling like you're reinventing the wheel over and over. And so that really helped me as I joined MCCU in lending and kind of worked through some different phases, different roles in the credit union. And I became COO prior to becoming CEO. And I went to CUNA Management School and I had this network, and it was just, it was exciting to take on new things because I never felt totally alone in trying to figure things out. And so Yeah, 10 years ago, actually last month was 10 years. I became the CEO at MCCU, and I was actually an internal candidate for a search, as you know. We talked a lot through that process, and yeah, I just really love it. So,
And I love the promotion from within. I think, as you and I discussed in my career journey, my first opportunity to be a CEO was being promoted from within at the Utah
mhm,
Credit Union League. And then I recruited outside to Washington State and here to Michigan. But I'm a big fan. I think organizations benefit so much when that can happen. Another part of your career that you might touch on, though, is you very quickly got involved in the chapter and with the Michigan Credit Union League as an alternate director, now as a director. Explain maybe where that came from, your interest in wanting to be a part
yeah.
of something outside your credit union.
Yeah. So, no, I love that question. Thank you. So the previous CEO at MCCU, Peggy Day, once I became COO, she very much mentored me in terms of getting me involved and really, it was at that point, it was kind of like, okay, I might be interested in being a CEO one day, but I was really interested in learning as much as I could. So she really helped facilitate that and, getting me involved in strategic planning with the board and allowing me to really bring in a lot of resources. But she also was very active, and she was a board member for the MCUL, and she was very active with the chapter. And she just one day was like, this is your next step. You've got to get involved in this. I mean, this is where you can really get to know people. And that was probably my first like face to face. These are people that we're dealing with all the same things. And as I got involved, it kind of, with the chapter, but also going into advocacy, just realizing, how you can make an impact. I wasn't a CEO then, but I felt like I was making an impact. And there's so many people in our industry that are so passionate about different areas. It's contagious. So I've really, I continue to just get a lot out of that. There's so much knowledge, and I feel like it's just being involved with the league, whether it's a committee or advocacy or sitting on the board. It's just, I love being surrounded by all these people that I just admire and look up to. And it just kind of inspires you to, to do more and be more.
Two
So,
things that you said are a great segue to the next question about leadership lessons and the
yeah.
things that you think matter most in leadership. Because you talked about mentoring, which
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of becoming a leader, to have mentors. And then when you become a leader, obviously you realize the importance of that. Um, but also, as you mentioned about surrounding yourself by people who are passionate about the industry, and that really develops your leadership skills. But so when you think about leadership, you've been a COO and you've been CEO of Marshall Community Credit Union for 10 years. What are some of the leadership lessons or leadership traits that you think matter most for today's credit union leaders?
Mm-hmm. I could talk about this all day, so we'll have to talk more one day. But, I was trying to narrow that down because I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I think the one that I settle on is the concept of leaders at all levels. And to me, it's really important, from my role as a CEO, I'm not the expert in very many things at this organization. And, I think it's really important to acknowledge and understand who your experts are. The serving members every day, our tellers are the experts at that. That's what they do. They know that. They know the ins and outs of it. And I think, really encouraging them to lead regardless of the levels. And, I do, what kind of made this dawn on me personally, I always had seen it with my career and always just like looking at where can you make a difference? How can you learn more that's going to help somebody else or make their job easier? But if it's okay, I just kind of have a personal little story that really made
Sure.
this hit home. So I have twin boys, as you know, that we share that in common, that are very involved in sports. And I remember about early middle school, they both played soccer at the time, and it was kind of their first experience with teams having captains. And having twins, one plays offense, one plays defense, so that's nice. But one of the boys was selected to be captain one year, and so he did. He was vocal, he was positive. I mean, it was great to see. Well, the beginning of the next season, he was no longer captain. And so that first game on the soccer field, he played center back defense, and he was silent. He wasn't moving the defense. He wasn't talking. I mean, a little bit, but not like he had been. And after that game, I said, what are you doing? Like, the coach is telling you to talk more. And he says, I'm not a captain though. And it really dawned on me, like, how this is my child. Like, I'm not teaching him that. And so I think so many people, it really dawned on me, he didn't have the title anymore. So he wasn't doing those things. That was somebody else's job to do. And that really dawned on me that, somewhere along the line, we tend to learn that that person has a title, they're the leader. And really, that person has the title, so they have the title, but anyone can be a leader. Anyone can make a positive impact. You don't have, it's not, leadership isn't connected to a title. And that really hit home for me of like,
That's such a great story and a great analogy with sports. Sometimes we probably wish that we could just strip all titles away and encourage personal leadership and teamwork. And, I just think that's a great example of a leadership trait that you're describing. What else? How about one other one? What's one other thing that really you think is critically important for a leader?
Yeah, I think the other thing I was thinking of is just, continuously learning. I've worked with people that go into a room and they think they're the smartest person in the room. I go into a room and I know I'm not, because, I might know something more about one topic, but you can learn things from everyone. And I just think that's really important to kind of take a step back, because as the CEO, you've got to be confident and knowledgeable, but also taking that step back to say, again, these are my experts, and, I don't have all the information. But even throughout my career, it's just that continuous learning, which I just touched on earlier, of just, once I know even my own role and I can make it efficient and I can do these things, but then I can spend time learning of how does my role impact you, and how can I make my role positively impact you or make it easier for you, and constantly looking at that. I think, sometimes people can get to their career where they're like, I've got this. And I just think, for me personally, I don't imagine ever saying that. So.
Well, those two traits just go together, don't they? I mean, one kind of reinforcing that we're all leaders regardless of our titles, and we need to look for ways to help the team no matter what our title or responsibilities are. And then the concept of lifelong learning and realizing that none of us has all the answers. So, that's evident in how you described your passion for getting involved at the chapter and with the league and attending conferences and networking, because I think that shows that you have a real hunger and thirst for developing your skill sets. And a lot of that comes from networking. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
This kind of segues to the next question, which is about the credit union difference, right? And how we lead and how we serve in our respective, in our various roles within credit unions determines how members feel about the credit union and the credit union difference. So how do you see, what is the credit union difference? What does it mean to you? How does your credit union strive to make that credit union difference be felt in the way that you serve your members?
Yeah, I think, we talked about the collaboration. I think that's huge. I see that not only across the industry, but also, within our own credit union and at other credit unions too. In that commitment to community and being really proud of what we represent overall. That's not to say we don't screw it up sometimes, right? We, for
Mm-hmm.
sure, we all do, but it's just that, that bringing it back to just serving that one member at a time, that, recognizing their unique circumstances, and then really just our willingness to try to find solutions, to look at the whole person and the whole situation, and really look at where can we be creative to help them. To me, that's the credit union difference. And it's, it's what we talked about earlier, but it's just, I think that similar feeling is from top to bottom. And MCCU is not unique in this, but it's just been amazing working through the pandemic and just watching our team, and just, the compassion, like even though they're stressed and have all kinds of things going on, they're always focused on the member. And, that's just inspiring, because it's really easy to just focus on ourselves and what we're trying to deal with within these walls. And they, really focus on the member. Now that the pandemic has highlighted that and brought it more to the surface, but the reality is that's what they do out there all day, every day.
To wrap up that thought on the credit union difference, I've talked with a lot of leaders about this issue, the credit union difference. What is it? How do we demonstrate it in the way we serve? But I had never really heard that answer you gave, which I think is so true. Being proud of who we are and why we exist and how we're different from every level of the organization, including that volunteer board of directors. That really feeds the credit union difference. I hadn't thought about it in that way, and that's a great way to express it. And when you're a CEO and you're proud of the credit union difference and you're articulating that, and then your leaders are doing the same and your frontline staff are doing it, then it just sort of naturally plays out. And I think that was just a really great perspective. And it segues to the next question, which you touched on, which is we are working our way through a pandemic and a COVID impacted economy. We're clearly in a recession. We don't know how long it's going to last. We have job losses. We don't know to what extent that's going to be severe versus temporary. But as you said, I mean, this is where credit unions really show their colors when economic times get tough. So you talked about it a little bit, but as you approach your strategic planning and you approach the environment you're in, what are some of the things that are different? What are some of the things that you're talking about as you look to navigate through this year and head into next, given the economic environment and the pandemic health situation that we're dealing with?
Yeah, and I was thinking of that, and there's some obvious things, such as consumer behavior, right? In the pandemic, we had to really highlight how do we serve them remotely, and it was really good because we had some of the tools already and we just didn't use them very often, and so it's really pushed us to do that. And also look at where are we falling short. It really makes it evident, in the regular day-to-day non-pandemic, it's like, oh, that could be better. But then it highlights the need. So, I mean, that's kind of an obvious answer for me. But then, when I think of approaching strategic planning, one of the things that's a lot different for me is when you're planning for, the coming year, 2 years, there's tons of uncertainty. I just feel like it's so much more uncertain right now. And so I think it really makes for some good discussions and really good acknowledgement of that. And, as a CEO with our board, I am very transparent of here's where I think we're headed, but here's the 3 contingency plans for when I'm wrong about one of these. And so I think it really, it highlights just that some of that is an art and not a science. Really kind of, but I'm a big data person too. So I also like to watch the data and the trends, because I feel like that can sort of tip you off a little sooner.
It feels like we need to be more dynamic. It's harder to have a long-term 5-year, 3-year plan. It's more of a, okay, so what do we think we're looking at the next 12 months, and how do we stay nimble and responsive to the things that we're uncertain about, we don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's what everybody's saying. I think certainly deposit growth has put a strain on net worth ratios. My
Yeah.
sense is that right now, most credit leaders I talk to, they haven't really seen a spike in delinquency and charge-offs. In fact, they're pretty low. They haven't had a lot of mortgage loan forbearance activity, but they feel like more of that's coming. Is that how you're looking at it, or what is your perspective?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I'm looking at it. And, some of it are some of the programs put in place to help consumers that, I feel like a lot of times where you see the shift is when those start to phase out, which, we're seeing a little bit of that, and really understanding what is the impact. And, with this pandemic, which businesses will pull those people back into work and which ones won't. And it's still so hard to tell because I think we have a little bit of ways to go. Yeah.
You talked about pride and the pride that you and your team have in this difficult environment. What are some of the things that you're most proud of with Marshall Community Credit Union's response and the things that you've been doing for your members?
Yeah. I think some of the things I'm most proud of is just, first of all, with the team, there were, it probably was weeks, it felt like months, but there were weeks where, we were making decisions and 2 hours later, the decision had to be changed. And so I was really proud of just how they responded, because that's difficult to do with a team. I mean, we're a smaller team, but it's still difficult to do, especially under stress. And so I felt like we all did a really good job of just communicating what we knew, what we didn't know, this is our strategy right now, or this is the next step, because I really felt like I'd put something out or present something to the team, and then I'd be coming back shortly after to change it. So I'm really proud about that. And, I've heard stories about that across the industry, like just pulling together to know, okay, this is our goal. Yeah. And I think, in terms of for our membership, I mean, we really saw, it goes back to teamwork again, I guess, Dave, but I really saw, work shifting so that, we weren't doing a lot of collections. So our resolution specialist just shifted right over to help the mortgage team with mortgage forbearance programs, and really dug in and ran all of that. So we do a lot of mortgage lending, and our mortgage lending team has been just swamped and continues to be. So it would have been really challenging for them to step back and help these people, whereas our resolution specialist just naturally moved right into that role and
that's great.
took it and worked with them. So
how many team members do you have? You serve 15,000 members. You're a $265 million credit union. How many employees do you have?
So I should know this exact number, but like 55 probably. Yeah. So
at that size, it requires a lot of teamwork, especially in an environment like this where people have to multitask and sort of retrain for things that are needed now. Yeah. Well, let's shift to the personal side, if we could. Outside work, I know you mentioned your twin sons, and yes, we have that in common. For those who don't know, I have twin boys, 20 years apart, older and younger, that are fraternal. And so I can relate to some of the challenges, but also some of the blessings that come with twin boys. I know that's one of your personal loves, but talk about family and personal interests. Help us get better acquainted with Heather Luciani.
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask me this too, Dave. So I'm trying to figure that out still. Newly empty nesters.
Please don't tell me that you're a workaholic.
No, my boys were in sports year round forever, and we really love that. So we loved, the AAU weekends, the soccer tournaments. And so a lot of our free time was around that, but also you develop friends. And so you're traveling with other families. So, and so we really spent a lot of time doing that. our boys are still playing basketball in college, so we still have some of that. And so last year, being empty nesters, we really made a lot of plans for travel. So that's not really happening.
Now I understand.
So
Things didn't go as planned.
not quite. We kind of have a lot of trips backed up now. So, so yeah, enjoy doing things like that. I played tennis in college, and I recently dropped off all my rackets to get restrung. So I'm hoping to pick that back up. So it's a little bit of a transition, but you know, we're doing some things. When you get twin boys out of the house, then you start, you know, painting walls and fixing dents and things like that. So we're in that process, but yeah.
So the challenge of, I love to travel as well, as you know. Evelyn and I love that, and we're at that stage of life where that's important. And so there have been some challenges with the pandemic where some of our loves and interests have had to be put on hold or modified. But if you had to think of maybe a silver lining or some good things that have come out of this crisis, for lack of a better word, what would come to mind?
You know, I've really been able to reconnect like this via Zoom, you know, with some college friends, and we kind of really see how easy it is to do this way as opposed to, you know, travel across the state for dinner and come home. So that's been good. And I think just more appreciating the small group of people that you kind of interact with regularly and not taking it for granted, I think is the biggest thing.
I agree. And I think any kind of adversity, and in the scheme of things, what most of us have to deal with, being required to wear masks and restrict our travel, and knock on wood, if we're healthy and our family is healthy, these are relatively small sacrifices. But in any kind of adversity such as this, it does cause us, I think, to appreciate our family and to spend more time with them and to focus on the things that matter most, which is really our family and friends, and doing things that make a difference. And I've learned a lot in this conversation, so thank you. It's been really a pleasure for me to get better acquainted, and I'm sure those who watch and listen will say the same. Heather Luciani, thank you very much for being on Friday 5 with me, and we'll look forward to catching up in person sometime soon down the road.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, a great conversation with a wonderful credit union leader, Heather Luciani. I learned a lot. I loved when I asked the question about the credit union difference, how she emphasized the importance of us feeling pride in what the credit union stands for and what it does for members, and to transfer that feeling of pride as a leader to your team members, so that pride in service is conveyed into amazing service to members and to the communities that we serve. I also loved her perspective on how credit union leaders, CEOs, can't have the answers. And so you have to be a lifelong learner, and you have to foster a culture with your staff where they realize that they all have to be leaders. And I love the sports analogy where, you know, being captain of the team, having the title isn't what it's about. Everybody needs to be effectively a captain. Everybody needs to effectively be leading and encouraging the team to be successful, helping all to be successful. So on the personal side, I loved how she talked about now becoming an empty nester, but during COVID, not having the flexibility to do some of the things that they wanted to do, such as travel, but appreciating the fact that this environment gives us opportunities to get better connected with our family and friends, and to look forward to the future when things will be more normal. So love the conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And we look forward to future episodes of Friday 5 with Dave Adams.